One tiny little gun range in Missouri has been embroiled in a convoluted and confusing legal battle for 40 years. What once began as a fight to save its own club has now turned into a crusade to save gun ranges everywhere in the state, and possibly even the country, and if they lose, every gun club in Missouri could be in danger. You're going to want to keep watching for the details. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I try to cover new laws and big news items on this channel just like everyone else, though there are some things that I leave to the big guns, no pun intended. But what I really like to do here is bring attention to the fights going on with the little guys in hopes that it'll get them more attention and more help to fight the good fight. This right here is one of those stories. It involves a gun club in Missouri that was cut off at the knees 40 years ago and is now locked into a legal battle that mushroomed out into something much bigger that could decide the fate of every other range and club in the state. Maybe even in the country, as there are states with similar laws as this one. Because now the question isn't just the restrictions put on their club in the 80s. Now it's to decide whether or not the laws made to protect the other ranges and clubs from a similar end are even constitutional. So it's a pretty big deal. The club is the Glendale Shooting Club near Robertsville, Missouri. Once upon a time, it boasted over 400 members, had regular national and regional matches, and was home to everything from shotgun and high-powered rifle shooters to cowboy action shooters. It was founded in 1928 and was, by all accounts, a gun enthusiast's paradise. Then, in 1976, it moved to 107 acres in eastern Franklin County. They opened up a range for pistols and .22 rifles, a 200-yard rifle range, and 3 multi-purpose 50-yard ranges. But unfortunately for them, their neighbors were not a welcoming lot. The Racine family had owned 78 acres next to the club land since 1967, and despite claiming that the noise from the range basically ruined their lives and property, they didn't sue until 1983, a full 7 years after the range moved in. Still, the results of that lawsuit were catastrophic. But before I tell you the terrible decisions made by that court, here is a word about today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by American Hartford Gold. Now, I am a firm believer in diversifying against inflation, currency wars, failing banks, and what seems like ever-increasing threats of civil war brought on by government tyranny. That might be things like food and ammo, but it also includes precious metals. American Hartford Gold gives folks all kinds of options, from gold, silver, and platinum bars and coins delivered to your doorstep to the ability to invest them in a retirement account like an IRA or 401k. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, have a 5-star consumer satisfaction rating across multiple platforms, and are ranked as the #1 gold company in the country. And if you ever find yourself in a bind and need to sell, they also offer a buyback commitment, so there's really no reason not to invest. And if you tell them that I sent you, they will give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. And to make it extra convenient, there are 3 ways to get your hookup. You can click the link in the description, call the number right here on your screen, or text the word DOLL, that's DOLL, to 65532. And now, back to the show. In their lawsuit, the Racines claimed the club used the land for target practice, local, regional, and national shooting matches conducted with automatic weapons, handguns, shotguns, and high-powered rifles, and said the noise disrupted their lives on a daily basis at all hours of the day and night. They asked the court to permanently stop the club from shooting on its property. The court agreed with the couple, ruling that the use of the club's land, as described by the evidence, constituted an abatable, continuing temporary nuisance to the extent that it substantially impaired the right of the plaintiffs to peacefully enjoy their own adjoining land. The sustained noise found by the court to be a nuisance did cause actual inconvenience and physical discomfort to the plaintiffs. But rather than ordering the club to cease and desist, the court came up with, I guess, what was supposed to be a compromise? But the rules of the compromise shackled the club and turned it into a husk of its former self. The conditions the court set on the range were no shooting before 9 a.m. or after dark or after 6 p.m., no more than 10 shooting matches per year and only 2 high-power rifle matches, no more than 2 matches in any 1 month and only 1 on a Sunday, no more than 8 persons can shoot at one time during a pistol match, no more than 8 persons can shoot, period, at any time club-wide other than during a rifle match, no shootings of shotguns or firearms of a caliber greater than a .22 except between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and during a rifle match. What's interesting is that the Second Amendment Foundation's feature on this case notes that these draconian rules would force most clubs to close, and yet these are the very same rules imposed on many of the ranges back when I lived in Massachusetts. All new club members were warned that surrounding neighbors who moved in after the club and ranged would sit around watching their clocks and watches and call the police at any single gunshot that happened before or after the cutoff point. And it was a problem. Suffice it to say, the club's membership plummeted for pretty obvious reasons. Then, in 1988, just 1 year after the court issued their injunction, the Missouri General Assembly passed a range protection statute that the club thought would save them. After all, the law was supposed to give ranges immunity from nuisance and trespass actions and prohibit courts from enjoining the use or operation of firearm ranges on the basis of noise or sound emission. Plus, a year after that was passed, the Racines sold their property and moved away. So it seemed like everything might work out. Spoiler alert here, that is not at all what happened. The Racine land was bought by the landolts who were fully, unequivocally, 100% aware that they were moving in next to a shooting range. And the range, instead of filing suit right away to get the crazy injunction lifted, waited 8 years for some language in the protection law to be clarified. The club was afraid that the phrase normal use that was originally in the law could be used against them and could be used to uphold the restrictions because normal use could mean anything when the people defining it are usually not gun owners. But in '98, the normal use language was removed from the law, so the club went back to the circuit court and asked them to dissolve the injunction, claiming it had been rendered absurd and unjust by the Range Protection Act, as that law says that any noise complaints against ranges are null and void. They also said that they'd gone to great lengths to remediate any noise issues. Still, the court told them to kick rocks. The club appealed. The appeals court reversed the lower court's judgment, but not based on the merits of the club's argument. The appeals court said that the lower court messed up when it claimed the protection law didn't apply and told them to reconsider. This could have been the club's big break, but the lower court ordered an evidentiary hearing and the club ran out of money. So the club and the landolts instead agreed to a settlement that required the injunction stay in place without legal action for another 20 years. The way the club saw it, they'd already dumped so much money into this thing that it would take that 20 years to fundraise anyway for the next round of legal fights. In 2021, that agreement ended and the club again went back to the circuit court. This time, the landolts argued that allowing the range to continue existing as a normal range was equivalent to stealing their property rights without compensation. They pointed to previous cases that found that property rights extended to enjoying that property and that allowing the range to go back to its old ways would be taking away the landolts' enjoyment without due process, even though they were the ones that chose to move in next to a pre-existing gun range. Now, I'm a big proponent of private property rights. They are the very foundation of liberty and self-ownership. But that argument is pure entitlement. Moving in next to a rain cloud and expecting things not to get wet is flat out stupid. And because it's stupid, the judge ruled in favor of the club. Thank you. But, of course, the landolts appealed, and this time they pulled out the big guns. They argued that the range protection law itself is unconstitutional. That argument is dangerous, as if they were to win, it would roll back protections for every range and club in the state, opening every single one of them up to the same kind of frivolous litigation. And it would give people in other states some ideas. You know that those gun controllers watch each other for ideas. The case made it all the way up to the Missouri Supreme Court, but the court pulled a SCOTUS and punted the case back down to the lower courts in order to dodge the constitutional question, because that would be messy and the upper court didn't feel like getting their hands dirty. The judges said that the club relied exclusively on a change in law to support its motion for summary judgment and did not assert uncontroverted material facts demonstrating the change in law rendered the continued enforcement of the injunction inequitable. The circuit court erred in entering summary judgment. But what is the point of a law protecting you from someone pissing in your Cheerios if the courts say it doesn't apply to you because someone already pissed in your Cheerios? Because that's basically what's happening here. So now the case goes to trial, where the landlords will argue their case in front of a jury, where the outcome could determine if the whole protection law comes crashing down. The court date is still over a year away, with a pending date in April of 2025. Meanwhile, the injunction is still in place. The club has been doing everything they can to try and reduce the noise even further, while the landlords have been keeping notes of every alleged incident, claiming that once folks started shooting at 8:58 rather than 9 a.m., and another time when they complained that the Franklin County Sheriff's SWAT team dared to train until 6:05. So then it becomes an argument over whose watch is right. That's going to go swimmingly. The club estimates that they've spent over $200,000 on the case at this point, with most of the money coming from personal donations and contributions from club members. The club treasurer estimates that he himself has donated $30,000 over the years and told the Second Amendment Foundation, "For almost 40 years, Glendale's members have fought to get this injunction lifted. The club is a shadow of what it once was because of it, but our members are not giving up. They've put years of blood, sweat, and tears into it, spending just about every single dollar they've had. We've come close a time or two, but each time the courts have shot us down. And now it's an even bigger issue. We've had to defend a state statute, one saying that you can't enjoin a range like ours from being declared unconstitutional. People don't realize it's much larger than just our club. There are over 40 states with similar statutes protecting shooting ranges. Depending on where this goes, the impact on gun owners all over the country could be a disaster. It's something you try not to even think about." The club has now set up a Give Send to Go to help in their efforts, which I will link down in the description. As the club said, this case has grown and morphed into something so much bigger than the club itself. It's now become about the right for clubs to exist, period. So if nothing else, please share their page and this video to try and get the word out. And on that note, that is it for this video. Again, please do the algorithm things on this one. Super important here to get this information out in front of more eyeballs. Like, share, subscribe if you are new here. Ring the notification bell for good measure. Drop a comment down below. And as always, guys, thank you for tuning in for stories like this, and happy shooting.